Welcome to Future Talk. On today's program, we're going to talk about online entrepreneurship and how to start your own online business. My guest is Muffi Ghadiali, who has built several successful online businesses. He has 17 years of experience in consumer marketing and technology, including international experience. He's a product manager at Lab 126, which is a subsidiary of Amazon.com, and he's an adjunct professor at Stanford who teaches internet entrepreneurship. Muffi, welcome to the program. Good to have you here today.
Thank you, Marty. Excited to be here.
So how did you get started in this whole field of internet entrepreneurship?
Great question. So I have always been intrigued by how the internet has shaped us, not just from a technology standpoint, but also from a society. So if you think about it, we are at a point in sort of the history of mankind where we can sit in our chairs and pretty much learn anything that we want without getting up from our chairs.
Is that a healthy thing? Is too much sitting in your chair a good thing?
That's a great question. It's not, as long as you walk around and get some healthy exercise, I think it's great. But the amount of information that's at our disposal is just phenomenal. The real power now is how we take that information and put it to use. And to answer your question, that's what I really tried to do with my course here at Stanford, was to take all of that knowledge and then channel it in a way that can efficiently make money and turn simple ideas into profitable businesses.
Well, making money is something that most people like to do. Let's say that you want to start some kind of business. Maybe your wife crochets potholders or something, and you want to sell them, or maybe you have something even more ambitious in mind. How do you go about creating a business around that online?
Right. So what I've kind of distilled it down is into 5 steps of starting with understanding who your customer is and what they're looking for. So a simple tool to understand customers, so going back to your example of a business that's related to crochet knitting, there are tools that are available from companies like Google where you can search for keywords, and keywords are things that your customers are looking for. Using those tools, within minutes you can actually estimate how many customers there are in the US, across the globe, that are looking for something like this.
You can determine if a market exists for your product.
Absolutely. And so the point is, you can estimate a market within a matter of hours before you actually start building anything or investing huge amounts of money.
So you want to make sure that a demand exists before you start investing. You want to be sure that somebody's going to buy your stuff if they can get easy access to it.
Exactly. So that, not only that, but you can also look at how that demand is being met today. So a simple Google search with those exact same keywords will yield a list of your potential competitors. And as you sort of look into each competitor, you can build a profile of what is serving this market's needs, and you can build a good understanding of where the needs are not being met. So what I talked about in my course was finding gaps where the existing market players are not meeting the customer's needs, and then capitalizing on them.
So basically you look for a need that's not being fulfilled.
Exactly.
Okay, and let's say you've decided that you can sell your product on the internet. Now you have to have a website, right? How do you go about getting your own website?
Right. So when in the early days on the internet, so about 25 years ago, most websites were hand-coded, and you needed specialized skills to set up a website. Now there are open platforms called content management systems. A good example is WordPress or Drupal. These are open source, community managed platforms that can build extremely complicated, scalable websites in a matter of hours. So for instance, and I'll give you an example, whitehouse.gov is built on Drupal, which can run highly scalable systems as well as small businesses. The beauty of this is all of these are free systems that can be downloaded and installed on any servers. And as sort of businessmen without technology background, you can find developers who can manage these sites for a few $100s a month.
So there is some programming required. You are going to probably need some help if you're not a programmer yourself.
And fortunately not, because there are so many existing programmers available who are proficient in these types of platforms, so WordPress or Drupal, and who can literally implement a website for a few $100s a month. They can design it to your specifications. They can add certain features. So for example, if you're selling things online, you need a shopping cart, you need a payment engine. All of these are available as modules, and developers who are experienced can actually plug them in a matter of hours and get that functionality going.
So they're basically software kits that it's sort of like a company in a box. It already has everything you need. It has the ability to take credit cards and everything you need to sell.
Absolutely. For instance, you can use a very basic account from PayPal that can be set up in a matter of 15 minutes, and you can be accepting credit card transactions on your website within an hour. So the point of all of this is a lot of this stuff has been created either by third parties or by outsourced communities, and so for business professionals, they can focus on their value add, on their marketing, and less on technology.
So this is a little bit like Amazon.com. You work for a subsidiary of it. Like they basically replace the brick and mortar building and cut out all the overhead, and they do pretty much all of their selling online.
Right. So for a small business, they can look at three things. Either selling products online, so it's physical products, which can be sourced in the US or outside. They can sell services, which is basic services like copy editing, proofwriting, format conversion, things like that. Or they can sell information, which is online learning, online education. All of these are highly scalable, and really what a small business entrepreneur really needs to focus on is how they're going to differentiate themselves in the market, how they're going to outmarket.
Scalable, meaning that if suddenly your customer base jumps by a factor of 100, it's not that much trouble to accommodate it.
Exactly. So going back to your example of a brick and mortar, the capital investment in starting a brick and mortar business runs in the hundreds of thousands or sometimes in the millions of dollars. In an online business, the capital investment is extremely low because everything is virtual and it's scalable. So as you get more customers, you can just buy more server space, more computing horsepower, and you can outsource to more developers and things like that. The other huge opportunity also is expanding globally. So if the service is compelling enough, it can be sold pretty much outside the US in any country that has that need. So expanding globally becomes much more easier. And then the third aspect to it is there are outsourced services for pretty much everything. So for instance, you want to get good web designing, graphics, icons, logos. All of these things can be outsourced to experts in their field. So you can outsource logo design to a graphics expert. You can outsource your website design to a web expert, and leverage sort of the best of breed without actually having physical employees and physical location.
Now you've organized a few online businesses yourself. What is an example of one of your businesses?
So one business, and this is really close to heart because my wife actually runs it, is teaching event and wedding planning to students all over the world. It's a very fast-growing profession, and so there's a big need for customers to learn the basics of wedding planning. So her expertise was she brought a lot of understanding of the market because she herself has been doing it for a decade, and we took that concept and turned it into an online program. We've used a mix of social media marketing and online marketing, and the success has been phenomenal.
When you say that she's teaching a certain type of planning, so what is it that you're selling? What is it that you're getting paid for? Are you being paid for the right to view certain videos, for example, that have the instruction?
Correct. So it's a full course that starts with how to plan all sorts of events. There is offline coursework that the student has to do, so they have to do these things. So it's academic as well as practical. And then at the end of it, when the student completes the course, they get a certification.
Considering how much free information there is on the web, do you ever feel that it's hard to compete with people who have comparable information who are giving it away for nothing?
So my analogy to that is creating a brand and creating value. For instance, this glass of water is free. But at the same time, you can walk into a restaurant and pay $5 for a bottle of Perrier. So there's, creating a brand, creating value that's beyond free is really, I think, the challenge of the entrepreneurs of the next generation.
Are there any particular types of businesses that are especially good niches right now, places that are not fully served that somebody could get started?
Right. So my personal experience has been there are a lot of businesses that have missed the online revolution. So they're still doing business in sort of the mail order way of doing business, where it's slow, it's not global, it's not using all of the latest technologies and marketing techniques. I would advise, if somebody's looking at starting a new business, I would advise them to look at existing businesses that have not really made the leap into social media, into marketing, and take them on as opportunities. And the reason why I say this is because simply because the business exists today, there's a market for it.
So with the social media, does that mean, for example, that you put your business on Facebook and you try to friend as many people as you possibly can, and you start on Twitter and you're constantly tweeting about your products and what you're up
to?
Right.
And yes, exactly. All of these social media channels have their unique nuances. Twitter is very different from Facebook. In most of these channels, it's very hard to market something directly because, and giving the example of Facebook, most people are in Facebook to hang out and relax and chat with friends. So to sell directly on Facebook doesn't usually work, but building a community on Facebook is extremely helpful because that community will eventually get you customers back to your website. Same is true with Twitter, where there's a lot of conversations going on Twitter, but it's if you try to sell things on Twitter, it doesn't work. So it's great to find out what's going on in terms of your specific business, your specific industry, and for instance, following people that are looking for things that you're selling.
Now, you've taught courses in this. Do many of your students actually go ahead and try to start their own online businesses?
Right. So many of my students have been extremely inspired by the course, especially in terms of sort of the hands-on value of taking your idea and implementing it. A lot of them are on their way to establishing businesses. My intent is to actually, the next time I do this course, my intent is to take one of their businesses as a case study and present it to the next generation of students.
Because I think you also want to continually refine your product. You want to get constant feedback from your users, and that's one thing that social networking does. If there's anything about your program or your product that's not that good, somebody ought to let you know about it.
Absolutely. And what's interesting about online marketing is that it's still in its nascency. There is a lot more that we'll have to learn as marketers and as business owners because it's constantly evolving. And it's a challenge as well as an opportunity. So if folks feel that they've been left behind by the internet revolution, there's a lot more opportunity. You can still learn, you can still come up to speed in terms of all the latest technologies and marketing techniques, and you can outrun folks who've been there. If they don't, if folks don't move fast enough, you can outrun them.
Is there the potential to make really good money in this type of business? Or are we talking largely about cottage industries, someone who's cleaning out their attic and they have a bunch of old dolls to sell, or stuff like that?
I think there's an opportunity for both. There's an opportunity to create a lifestyle business where you can earn enough so that you can free up time to do things that you love. But at the same time, there's opportunities to scale these businesses into millions, more than millions of dollars. The interesting thing is, what I observed personally is when you start off with a concept and 6 months or a year into it, you realize that there's so much more that can be done. There's just so many adjacencies that you end up discovering purely because of customer feedback. Customers will come and ask you, can you do this for me? Can you do beyond this? And you'll find customers in areas that you didn't think about before. So it really comes down to how much more time and money you're willing to invest into expanding.
Well, what is really the most critical item in the success of this type of business? Do you have to have a really beautiful website, or does the product itself have to be good? Then there's your reputation, like after someone pays you, you have to ship it and it has to get there in good condition. So I guess all of these things would be factors.
Absolutely. So having a good brand and good marketing message are sort of table stakes. Without that, most businesses will not attract customers. But the third most critical thing is how well you treat your customers. So basic things like being responsive, answering their questions, dealing with any challenges you have, because
taking back the product if they're not satisfied.
Absolutely. So that is the number one thing that differentiates our business from anyone else. And there's no way of hiding behind it, because your customers are going to be on Twitter, they are going to be on Facebook, and they will say good things and bad things. And you take the bad things in stride and you build on the good things.
Do you lose a little bit of the human element in this type of business, in that you never see your customers face to face? You never meet them in person. They're just little blips on your computer screen. Is that a loss?
That's a great question. It's a loss and it's a gain in some ways, my perspective. Going online opens up the entire world. So having a physical business, you're really constrained to that neighborhood or to that locality. Going online, the world is your oyster. You can, and in our example, we have students from all over the world, from countries that we would have to look up on the map. And I think that part is also exhilarating to see that we are bringing value to folks that we have never imagined that we could have reached any other way.
If you sell in different countries, do you have to be familiar with the laws in those countries regarding shipping and postage and what type of items you can send? Does it get more complicated to send overseas?
It does, especially when you're shipping physical products. There are certain restrictions in terms of what can be shipped, what cannot be shipped, in terms of return policies and things like that. But the good thing is all of this information is online. So if you have a customer from a country that you've never shipped before, it's always good to look it up. Most of these regulations or restrictions are available online. And then it's a learning process. So once you realize what the restrictions are with a certain country, it's repeatable the next time you ship it to that country again.
Do you think we're getting to the place that more and more types of businesses are going to be going online, and there will be fewer businesses where you actually walk into a store to buy something?
My perspective is, yeah. I mean, I think that it'll be a combination of both, but every business will have to go online in some shape or fashion. Not being online will not be an option for a business, even if they're brick and mortar and located in a physical space.
So even if you have a manufacturing plant that manufactures cars, can you or will you be able to buy a car online?
In fact, you can buy a car online today. So eBay Motors does exactly that, is buying and selling cars online. So it's a marketplace for cars. But you can imagine, I mean, you can go to any major manufacturer today and configure to order your car. So most businesses have a presence that's online that helps customers do research and understand their products, understand the company, and maybe even buy the product online.
Now we're talking about global markets. Do American sellers have overseas competition? Do we have people from Russia and China competing against us in the United States? Absolutely.
And in any business, there will be competition. Today, we are in some ways competing with China on so many things. It all comes down to really establishing a solid brand and a product that can live up to the brand and customer service. It doesn't matter which country you're based in, which geography you're working out of, as long as you can really excel in these three areas, I think we can beat any competitor.
Would you say that Amazon is really the best example of this type of company? I mean, they kind of pioneered it.
Absolutely.
And they've been breaking a lot of new ground. Since you work for a subsidiary of theirs, do you have any insight into their future direction of development?
I can't share any specifics.
Okay. Well, what else can you tell us about this business if someone is aspiring to do it? How do they start? Do you begin with the product and try to sell it, or do you try to identify what the need is?
I would start with the customer first. I mean, the thing that makes most businesses fail is the lack of profitable customers. So you might have a great product, you might have great marketing, but if you cannot get profitable customers, the business is sure to fail. So I would start with customers, find out if there's a need, learn as much as I can about them. So one of the things that I talk about is not only doing research online, but doing research in the real world as well. So a simple thing, for going back to your example of crochet knitting, what I would recommend somebody who would want to get into that business would be get a clipboard, write a bunch of questions down, and go and stand outside of Michael's, because that's where you find your customers. Ask them questions about how they buy online, how they make decisions online, what are their unmet needs, what would they search for when they would go and search on Google. So it's a combination of understanding customers and then evolving it into an online strategy.
So it sounds like there's still quite a bit of effort involved in this. It's not like you put up a website and things just start flying off the shelves automatically. You have to put in as much effort as any brick and mortar business.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There is no shortchanging effort or time. I mean, both of these, any business requires effort and time. The difference, though, in online marketing is you don't need a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Most people think you need millions of dollars to start an online business. That's not true. You need time and you need a lot of effort. So there's no shortchanging effort in any business.
So could you get your website up and running for maybe a few $100s or maybe a few $1,000s?
Absolutely. And in our experience, we've taken a business from concept to profitability with less than $500 a month. And I think that's a repeatable model. So we can actually do it for more things.
And you think pretty much most people can do this if they're sufficiently motivated?
Yes. So I think the number one thing is beyond the investment of time and effort is passion, because it takes time and it takes a lot of failure to get it right. So passion is something that when you wake up in the morning, you go, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try it one more time, and I'm going to figure out how to make this happen. So the combination of effort, time, and passion is really what most people need.
Great, but it can be done.
It can be done.
Okay. Do you plan to start any additional companies? I mean, do you start these companies to make a living, or do you do it sort of to demonstrate that it's possible?
I think it's more the latter. Is just the possibilities of an online business excite me so much that I've been consulting with a lot of my students in terms of how to get their businesses going. I plan to do more of this, but again, it's like I said, it's an investment of time and effort, and finding more time and effort.
Talking about spreading knowledge on the web, there's a lot of free stuff. You have things like Khan Academy, which basically tries to provide high-quality free education to everybody everywhere. I'm sure you're familiar with that. Are there some areas that it's just too hard to make a living in because there's just too much stuff available for nothing?
And the question is, what do we need to make a living? Mm-hmm.
Let's say you want to quit your day job and you want to wake up at noon every day and without changing out of your pajamas, go to your computer and just sit there until 6 in the evening and make your living somehow.
Right. So my first advice to someone who's thinking of quitting their day job is don't quit your day job till you can get to a scale that can supplement or completely replace your day job. And it is like you said before, it takes time and effort. Now it can be done with a few hours a day. As long as those hours are spent intelligently, it can be done. So you don't have to quit your day job to do something like this.
Now, do you think this is going to have a really big societal impact? We've been talking about how it can affect the individual as far as making money online or getting products online, but do you think this represents a fundamental shift in the direction that our whole society is going in our redefining our relationships with one another? Absolutely.
So if you look at the last three revolutions that the human race has encountered. So the agricultural revolution was farming and close communities that were supporting each other. Then came the Industrial Revolution, automobiles, textile industries, which was big corporations, and employees spent an entire lifetime, and then they had pensions. Now we are in the midst of this technological revolution where more and more companies are asking employees to be more independent. For instance, work remotely, manage your own retirement in things like 401ks, so pensions have gone. I think the next generation of employees will be completely virtual and on demand, where you can start a business with a virtual set of employees. You can pick and choose the best of breed to do exactly what's needed, and then they move on and do what they need. And I think it's going to be great from a workforce standpoint as well, because as a freelance independent workforce, I can choose to work when I want to, choose to work for who I want to, and just hone in on my skills. So you're right, there's going to be a tremendous shift in the next few decades in terms of how society evolves as well.
Can we assume that this technology is always going to be stable? I mean, it's dependent on the power grid, it's dependent upon a lot of things. It's dependent upon introduction of new technology. There are probably a few critical pressure points that could bring a catastrophic system collapse if they were present. Do you think we need to worry about that, abandon our own ways and just plunge into this headlong, or is there a risk?
I wouldn't worry about that, because the world moves on technology today. And so if I don't think any human being can survive without technology in some way or the other, either cell phones, or the internet, or TV, or any other medium. So if there is some catastrophic event, I think we'll have a lot more things to worry about.
Well, that's a pretty optimistic way of looking at it. It looks like we are heading for some amazing changes in the world, and I'm looking forward to see what they look like. Now, I've just gotten the signal that we're about out of time, so we are going to have to wrap the show. I'd like to thank you for being here today. I've been speaking with Muffi Ghadiali. I think I pronounced that correctly.
Yes.
Ghadiali. Okay. Online entrepreneur, adjunct professor at Stanford, working currently at Lab 126. Good to have you. Thank you for watching. I'm Marty Wasserman. Visit us at www.futuretalk.net. See you next time. Okay. Good job.
Awesome.